You're listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This podcast is sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. It's not about the destination. It's about going someplace you never thought possible. Go to imaginenext.ingrammicro.com to find out more. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Keri Roberts, and my guests today are Peter Newton, the Senior Director of Products and Solutions at Fortinet, and Darius Goodall, the Senior Director of Corporate Channel Marketing at Fortinet. Welcome both. Excited to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Keri.
Thanks, Keri. It's great to be here.
We are chatting today about security considerations for remote work at scale. And you recently had a customer transfer their entire office staff to an all-remote staff of about 1,500 employees, and you were able to make that shift in a matter of days. Can you tell us a little bit about how you did that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's I have to admit that Fortinet actually didn't do anything to this. It was just the fact that they had Fortinet gear deployed. They were able to make that transition using the capabilities that are already built in. So they were using a FortiGate for their firewall, and that's for their primary web defense. And they had all their employees working in office. That was their policy. So when we needed to go to a completely out of office experience, all they had to do was, we have a free VPN client, FortiClient, that they could download onto everybody's machine, or all the employees could do it on their own. Then they can connect back into their headquarters by connecting to that FortiGate that was their external protection. It's also a VPN concentrator. It has thousands and thousands of VPN tunnels it can terminate. And so using that free client, they were able to connect securely back into headquarters, and it was all free. They didn't have to buy anything more, and they were able to, as you say, do that in a matter of days. So it was a very easy solution, and it just shows the power that our FortiGates have designed into them natively.
Yeah, I love your choice of words there. The out of office experience. It's almost very ethereal as they migrate away. So from a partner perspective, this represents a very interesting opportunity, Keri. There's a lot of companies, just as Peter describes over here, who kind of have a well balanced workforce. Those who actually work inside the office and those who are kind of regular out of office experiences, to use Peter's words. But as you start to migrate to this new world, this new normal, as they call it, right? It's suddenly when you have 100% of your workforce now working remotely, it has a number of effects centrally as well, right? In terms of I hear of a number of partners or customers immediately coming to me and saying, "Look, I don't have enough. I can't maintain enough sessions. I have to get initially some 50% of my workforce working on shifts, so that and knock other non-essential ones off the VPN, right?" So this was a great example of how to suddenly just uplift, right, and get everything working in terms of capacity. Of course, that doesn't account for the amount of bandwidth needed at central site. There's a number of things that can be done there that Peter will probably talk through in terms of optimizing that. But a very slick move there, yeah, for sure.
And most companies have already created remote setups without warning or notice. And so a lot of them need the help in setting up and understanding the extra equipment they might need. How can you help with this?
Well, I think that's when the individual companies need assistance, they're really going to their partners to help with what do they need to look at. Do they need to beef up the number of, say, tokens? They need Forti tokens for that two-factor authentication, so they know that the people that are connecting remotely are actually those employees. We know that passwords are frequently stolen or hacked. That's one of the leading causes or pathways of breaches. So adding that two-factor is important. And now that 98% of people are coming in remotely, you want to make sure you have that. And that's where a partner could come in and say, hey, you need to make sure you're looking at your tokens. You might want to take a look at your NAC policy to make sure that your BYOD policies are being enforced, as everybody's working from their home and maybe using an old laptop they used back in college or using their kid's tablet. Companies should have policies around what devices should get on their network and to what degree they should be allowed onto the network, as reflective of the security and capabilities of those devices. And that's where deploying a NAC is something a partner could do to really help somebody maintain security as their workforce shifts out to 100% or 98% remote.
And this is awesome, right? This is good conversation here, because really what you're saying is that, of course, this is way beyond just for a partner. This is way beyond just an opportunity to upgrade VPN, right? For a remote worker solution, there are so many other products and features and functions that either need to be turned up or augmented in some capacity. And all of that just comes together, inside the Fortinet portfolio to represent more opportunity for the partner than just VPN, right? So there's a bigger slice of the pie to be had there, so to speak.
To that point, though, it's not just we're pitching new products, the partnership pitch new products. It's the partners bringing that mindset of what's the total solution necessary. I mean, these are all products that are important when people are working in the office, but when things shift and people are working out of the office, maybe other things might be a little bit more important. And so doing that assessment with the customer and consulting with them as to what's important, and then assisting to fill in any gaps they might have.
Absolutely.
That's, I think, the real opportunity for partners to help in this time of crisis and transition and chaos.
For sure.
And you both were talking about VPN, and the VPN setup is a common thing companies need to do. What are some of the common questions you're getting about that right now, and how do you suggest that they do it properly?
So one question has been coming in, SSL versus IPsec. We generally recommend IPsec VPN connections. You actually get greater throughput, equal amount of protection. With our FortiClient, it's a free agent and has that IPsec tunnel built in. Our FortiGates scale to 1,000. So a FortiGate that you might buy to protect 100 employees in your network, we can support 10,000 IPsec VPN tunnels. So the capacity there is just enormous. So plenty of headroom. Sometimes SSL might be the right selection, depending on the device being used. If it can't take that VPN client, the IPsec VPN client, SSL is another way to securely connect back into the network and still have that protection across a public internet.
Yeah, and then there's, Peter, there's optimization here as well, right? Not everything is a VPN. In actual fact, today I find myself turning up VPN just based on the applications that I use less and less, because more and more of the applications are actually hosted. But therein, it's not necessarily just kind of, I don't need VPN for that environment. There are other products, just like Peter has said, that really come into play. And that might be two-factor authentication, token authentication, and so on. So there's definitely a certain shift or a dynamic, for these partners to analyze and understand with their customers as to, what's really on premises and what's kind of off premises, as Peter says. So what needs a VPN and what doesn't? How do you optimize that?
Yeah, some applications have their own security built into them. So as you connect to them, you create that. But for the endpoint tunnels, SSL and IPsec, for full connectivity from that endpoint device, the laptop, the mobile phone, back to the FortiGate back at headquarters.
Now, you suggest 2 phases when it comes to securing remote work at scale. What are the 2 phases and what do they include?
Yeah, so the first phase in shifting remote workers off is really focused around connectivity and identity. So making sure that everybody has those VPN tunnels on, making sure that people are using two-factor authentication so you know who's coming into your network. Those are kind of the initial parts of moving your workforce out at scale. Once they're out there, you want to take a look at some phase 2 considerations, or what additional security things should you be looking at. One, you want to make sure that you have strong endpoint protection on those devices that are at home, a long ways away from a help desk if something should go wrong. So making sure you have a strong endpoint protection like our FortiEDR that can detect and disarm attacks and even remediate automatically. So that's one consideration. 2, I've mentioned the controlling your network access policies, making sure your BYOD policies are enforced while more people are out remotely. And then lastly, you want to take a look at your cloud security using products like FortiCASB to control and protect the cloud access that is going on now from people accessing directly from their remote location to your clouds. You want some security and control over what's being accessed. So the 3 things: endpoint protection, access policy enforcement, and cloud security.
And I'm curious, you're talking about a lot of people are using a variety of devices at home. How do you make sure that all remote workers are keeping all their devices secure when they do their work on them. So for example, if they use a different computer or phone at some point, or their kid's tablet, as you mentioned, are there any procedures you recommend employers make to make sure their team maybe does each day before they begin their work?
Well, that's where something like a NAC, a Fortinet, can do a device assessment when it tries to connect to the network over that VPN connection. It can actually see if it's been updated to the latest firmware updates, whether it's got its AV on. It can do that device assessment as they're connecting on. And then it can give feedback to the person to say, hey, you need to update that. If they've got the FortiClient running on that laptop, it can actually do that as well. So both of those together can ensure that the devices coming onto the network are up to the security policies of the company.
Yeah, the other thing is, Keri, and this is a really good question that you asked, is that for many, right, they're used to working in an office environment, and then you send everybody home, of course. And what we say is that actually your threat exposure has kind of almost exploded, right? People are using different devices, as Peter says, they're using different devices to access the network. Are those devices secured or not, and so on. But there's also this other element as well, is, you've got to be extra cautious at a time like this. There's so much badness that's going on there, and there's so much opportunity, so much in the way of opportunistic attacks that are going on that kind of expand the threat horizon, so to speak. So, with remote workers, they've got to be as vigilant as ever. Look out for those phishing emails. Make sure that they're not clicking on things that they shouldn't be clicking on, and so on. And that's all part of, I want to say, another part of this, another type of firewall, which is the human firewall, is to make sure, and there's an opportunity there for the partners to educate their customers as well, in terms of, let's just be extra vigilant over there. You don't make sure your users aren't just kind of using any device, downloading anything that's malicious, going to malicious websites, and so on. And there are devices that obviously help protect that, such as email security and secure web gateway security, that will help in that respect. But nothing is better than the human firewall at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, the U.S. Cyber Command just actually released a warning about the COVID-based attacks on the rise, and how hackers are using that emotional hook to trick people into doing something they shouldn't, clicking on a link. And that's why one of the things that Fortinet does is we've recently opened up our NSE training that provides education for the broad employee about what are the security risks out there, what are the concerns, and how you should behave. So we've actually made those available for free, and partners can enable their customers to sign on, register, and learn about these basic security concepts. Now that, as Darius said, that each of those employees out there are part of the human firewall. We like to say that security is a team sport, and we need to make sure that everybody on the team knows how to play.
Yes, I love that statement. On this show, we ask all the time, and there's a lot of things going on now. Where do you see technology going within the next year, whether it relates to this particular topic or as a whole?
One clear trend that we see is the combination of both increasing automation and increasing intelligence. And so with that, it's enhancing the capability of a trained workforce. And by offloading a lot of the more menial tasks and administrative tasks, and really enable them to use their brain power and skillful thinking and diagnostic work and creative architectures to move the company forward. So I certainly see the combination of automation and artificial intelligence driving technology, making it a lot easier to do what we need to do.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't know what, and this is kind of hypothesizing a little bit, just like everybody is what is the future in terms of this isolation or this working at home type environment? Maybe it becomes part of our new normal, right? And in becoming part of our new normal, at some point we'll get an opportunity to be able to step back, take a breath, and look at exactly what it is that we've done, what we've deployed. And then, of course, it's to react to that and say, look, it worked, everything worked great, but there's opportunities for things to work better, just as Peter says there, right? And that might be, a readjustment or a redeployment of equipment in some capacity at some of these kind of power users' homes, these people who are passing a lot of bandwidth on calls through a telephone, teleconferencing, using a ton of different applications. And so they might require their own dedicated firewall there or something similar. to kind of really augment their experience and make it a little bit more seamless. But only, I guess, time will tell as to how much that'll definitely stick. But you'll definitely get people who will kind of get more used to working from home and become more adept to that, and it might become something a little bit more natural for us all. I don't know, maybe.
Now, you both shared so much information today. Where can people learn more about what we spoke about, or if they want to connect with each of you, where can they do that?
Well, at Fortinet.com, we have now a landing page dedicated to this Teleworker Solutions, where we have a lot of information, solution briefs, technical documents to figure out to guide folks on how to set this stuff up, as well as links to all these products that we've been talking about that enable this teleworking solution and the security solutions that enable it. So at Fortinet.com, go right there, and if you don't see it on the front page, search for Teleworker, and you'll find a whole bunch of information about that.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course, as a Fortinet partner as well, there's a bunch of resources there to kind of help you, build your not only perhaps your portfolio, but to help build your confidence and your knowledge of the products and how to go campaign in with your customers to kind of, continue your efforts as a trusted advisor and be able to offer your customers the next thing as well. So there's a good set of campaign assets on the Fortinet partner portal, which you can log into again on Fortinet.com and build up that campaign and enhance your business.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for coming on and sharing all of the information with us today.
Hey, well, it's good to be here. Thank you.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram TechSoul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Keri Roberts. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro's Imagine Next. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.